The story of Bartimaeus, as told in chapter 10 of Mark's Gospel, is yet another story of someone who was healed by Jesus. In some ways, it's just like all the other stories, which helped convince even Marcus Borg, one of the authors of the historical Jesus, that Jesus was indeed a spiritual healer. So many miraculous healings seem to take place in the presence of Jesus that you cannot separate them from the historical record. That makes the task of demythologizing the story of Jesus almost impossible. In case you are unfamiliar with that term, it was coined by those who desired to find the man behind the myth. In other words, the real historical Jesus. According to them, the Gospels are a compilation of myths, not an accurate history, and therefore very little can be known about Jesus the man. Rudolf Bultmann believed that by demythologizing the New Testament, however, you could better understand the existentialist message of Jesus, which in a few words was just to live a life of authentic existence. Marcus Borg, likewise, in the 1980s was part of this same effort, but he always had a problem with the fact that clearly Jesus was in his time a healer. He called Jesus a spirit person, someone who was rooted in the charismatic stream of Judaism. As one scholar noted, in Borg's binary way of thinking, there were two kinds of Christianity. The old kind, with its inerrant Bible and its purity-hungry God, and its emphasis on the dogma, and the emerging kind, with its emphasis on relationships and personal transformation instead. Similarly, there were two kinds of salvation, one that focused on the forgiveness of sins and getting into heaven, and one that focuses on the compassionate and just living in the here and now. And yet, Borg also acknowledged that there are more healing stories told about Jesus than any other figure in Jewish tradition. Therefore, Jesus must have been a remarkable healer. He believed that Jesus' gift as a healer came from his experience of the sacred. The healing stories, Borg said, reflect Jesus' intimate, powerful relationship with God and his great compassion. He often healed with words, touch, and physical means. The question then becomes, how can we become a compassionate healing presence for people today? There are at least hints of an answer to that question within the story of the healing of Bartimaeus. Jesus came to Jericho to teach and call people into the coming kingdom of God. A large crowd followed him that day, even as they were preparing to leave. And a beggar, sitting by the side of the road, a blind man named Bartimaeus, began to call out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." It was not Jesus who responded to him, but the crowd. They rebuked him and told him to be quiet. Here they were, all joyful and excited to be there, and here was this blind man bringing down their party. No doubt, he was dirty and a pathetic individual who lived on the scraps of others, not by choice, but by necessity. His presence within this scene was unwelcome to them. They just wanted him to stay quiet and not to bring any unwanted criticism of their community. Yet there he was. They passed by him every day, sometimes throwing him a coin or two, not really caring about him while they were going about their business. What is notable about this moment is that Jesus stopped, but he did not go back to the man. Instead, he asked the community to call him. Implied in that action is the fact that this man had done nothing wrong in calling out to Jesus, but that they had done something wrong by not responding to his need. To understand this story, you have to turn it around. It was a lesson to the crowd about having eyes to see and ears to hear. At the request of Jesus, they went to Bartimaeus saying, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." That seems like an abrupt change from telling him to just shut up already. I doubt that they were sincerely moved by compassion now. So maybe they were just curious to see what Jesus was going to do now. Bartimaeus jumped to his feet and left his tattered cloak and perhaps his last scrap of dignity as well behind him to go to Jesus. just as he was. And when he got there, Jesus did not have a lecture for him or even some word of wisdom for him. Instead, he simply asked the man, "What do you want me to do for you?" Consider that. The Son of David and the Son of God asked a blind man the very question that a slave might inquire of their master. What do you want me to do for you? No doubt, this was the lesson Jesus was trying to teach all of them that day, to respond to human need and human ways by becoming a servant. He taught the very same lesson to his disciples later when he washed their feet. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your teacher, your Lord, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example, that you should do as I have done for you." So if someone needs their feet washed, then why not you, to be the one who does so? Why not you, who live in community? Then if later your feet need to be washed too, you can trust that others will do the same for you. Be compassionate, but maybe also ask first just what it is that they need you to do for them. The question Jesus asked remains a profound one. We should probably use that phrase more often in our interaction with each other. We can't expect to always be able to help, of course, but if we listen, we might just understand their expectations better and be able to choose the best way that we can respond within our means to do so. In this case, for reasons that I still have trouble understanding, the faith of Bartimaeus was absolutely boundless. He did not ask for a donation, or for a scrap of bread perhaps, or for a new cloak to replace the one he'd just lost. No, instead, Bartimaeus asked for something that was seemingly impossible. He wanted to be whole. He wanted to be able to live without handicap as a functional member of their society. He wanted to be able to make a living, and dare I say it, to be able to walk in the light and leave all the darkness behind him. To ask this of Jesus meant that he saw Jesus in a way that others did not, even though their eyes were wide open. He saw Jesus with his heart, and he recognized Jesus as a spiritual man, someone who could connect him with the Almighty. There was no cure for his blindness, in the time period at least, but Bartimaeus knew that God could change his circumstance and make him whole. "Rabbi, I want to see," he told Jesus. And what did Jesus do? In this case, absolutely nothing, or maybe everything. He applied no medicine. He performed no operation. He did not even offer up a prayer. Instead, Jesus simply recognized this man's sincere desire to connect with God by faith. And by doing that, Jesus became that connection. This man was healed, not just because he believed, but because he dared to believe that with God all things are possible. And so he asked for the impossible. He also dared above all else to still believe that God cared and that God loved him. I find that quite extraordinary for someone who had suffered for so long. "Your faith has saved you," Jesus said. And from that day, this man could see and follow Jesus, which he did. This is not about medicine, though. This is a story about faith, one that invites us to believe and to live with confidence in God's love for us. Even though we may have become nobody in the eyes of the world, God still sees us. Even though we are far from the light will still come to us if we ask. Given that truth, and a God who is figuratively always asking, "What can I do for you?" what then should we ask for? I would not dare to answer that question for you. Your circumstance is unique, and it will change over time. But I believe that it is all about connection. Faith can connect you with God and also connect you with all those around you in a meaningful way. So maybe the very best thing for us to ask for is just enough faith to always believe in God's love, and just enough compassion to keep our eyes open so that we can see how we might help one another to live in the here and now. In that way, like Jesus, we can also become a healing presence for others. If we are connected with Him, then God will connect with them through us. In his book, The Quest of the Historical Jesus, Albert Schweitzer had this to say about Jesus. He comes to us as one unknown, without a name. As of old by the lakeside, he came to those who knew him not. He speaks to us the same word, follow thou me, and sets us to the task which he has to fulfill for our time. He commands, and to those who obey him, whether they be wise or simple, he will reveal himself in the toils, the conflicts, the sufferings, which they shall pass through in his fellowship. And, as an ineffable mystery, they shall learn in their experience who he is. Be safe, and God bless you.